They always said you could tell a lot about a person by the way they treated the cleaning staff. But no one paid attention when Maria Lopez, wearing a worn-out uniform and pushing a cleaning cart, walked into the pristine offices of Apex Enterprises in downtown Chicago. With her hair tied back, head lowered, and hands calloused from years of hard work, she was invisible to everyone. The executives in their designer suits and polished shoes barely noticed her. To them, she was just another worker cleaning up after their mess. Little did they know, Maria was about to change everything. It was a typical Tuesday morning when one of the top executives, Andrew Clark, scoffed at her as she cleaned the glass windows in the boardroom. "Hey, make sure you don't leave streaks this time. Okay, some of us have important meetings here," he said with a smug grin, barely glancing her way. His colleagues laughed. Maria said nothing, only nodding and continuing to wipe the windows in silence. But the truth? Andrew's laugh was about to cost him his entire career. As the hours passed, employees came and went, treating Maria like she was a fixture in the room, not a human being. They gossiped about her, made jokes behind her back, and dismissed her with a flick of their hands if she was in their way. No one realized who she truly was. No one, that is, except for one woman, Elena Ramirez, a new hire and recent business school graduate, noticed how everyone treated Maria. But something didn't sit right with her. She had seen Maria walk through the office halls with a quiet confidence, her eyes sharp and observant, as if she was watching more than just the dust on the floors. Then, on that fateful afternoon, everything unraveled. The company's CEO had flown in from New York for the highly anticipated annual review meeting. He was the man everyone respected, feared, and admired, Jonathan Blake, the ruthless leader who had taken Apex Enterprises to the top of the corporate world. The air was tense as he entered the boardroom, the room falling silent as he stood at the head of the table. But then something unexpected happened. Jonathan glanced at Maria, standing quietly in the corner, her cleaning supplies in hand. For a brief moment, the room felt like it had stopped breathing. And then, to the shock of everyone in the room, he smiled. "Maria," he said warmly, "I think it's time, don't you?" The board members exchanged confused glances. Andrew Clark, who had mocked her earlier, sat frozen, his arrogant smirk fading. Maria calmly put down the rag she had been holding, her movements deliberate. She took a deep breath and turned to face the stunned executives. "Yes, Mr. Blake," she said with the same quiet authority that had been hidden beneath the surface all along. As she walked to the front of the room, a wave of confusion and disbelief rippled through the crowd. Elena's heart raced, realizing something monumental was about to unfold. "Ladies and gentlemen," Jonathan Blake continued, "I'd like to introduce you to Apex's majority shareholder, Maria Lopez." The room erupted in gasps. Eyes widened, jaws dropped, and silence blanketed the once arrogant group of executives. Andrew Clark sat motionless, his face drained of color. He couldn't believe what he had just heard. Maria stood tall now, her presence commanding the room in a way no one had ever expected. "For years," she began, her voice steady and calm, "I've watched how this company operates from the inside, not from behind a desk, but from the floors you walk on, the hallways you pass through, and the offices you leave in disarray. And what I've seen is a culture that lacks respect, that values profits over people. But today, that changes." The transformation in Maria was unmistakable. No longer the quiet cleaning lady. She was now the powerful force behind the company. A woman who had built herself up from nothing and now owned the very empire they all worked for. "From this day forward," she continued, locking eyes with each executive, "things will be different. I'm not just cleaning up your messes anymore. I'm cleaning up this company." Elena, standing in the back, couldn't help but smile. Maria had been the invisible force all along, and now she was about to make her mark in a way no one would ever forget. As Maria finished her speech, the truth settled in. They had scorned her, belittled her, and mocked her, but they had never really known her. And now, she owned them all. The air in the boardroom was thick with shock and disbelief. Andrew Clark, who had mocked Maria just hours earlier, sat rigid in his chair, his fingers gripping the armrests as if to steady himself in a reality he couldn't comprehend. His mind raced, trying to recall every word, every sneer, every offhand comment he had made. How could he have been so blind? Maria, standing before them, was no longer the woman they had ignored or dismissed. She held their futures in her hands, and everyone in that room knew it. The cold corporate world they had built around themselves suddenly felt fragile, like glass ready to shatter at the slightest touch. "Let me be clear," Maria said, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. "This company will no longer tolerate the kind of arrogance and disregard I've seen here. You've forgotten what it means to respect the people who make this place run. Well, that changes now." Jonathan Blake, who had quietly watched this drama unfold, nodded in agreement. It was clear that this moment had been planned long in advance, that he and Maria had been working together behind the scenes, preparing for this reveal. Jonathan wasn't the typical hard-nosed CEO the board had feared. He was more than that. He was a man with a vision that included people like Maria, who had earned their place through resilience and strength. The executives remained frozen, some whispering to each other in disbelief, while others stared at Maria with newly humbled eyes. But it was Andrew who finally spoke up, his voice shaky and uncertain. "Ms. Lopez," he stammered. I didn't know. I had no idea." Maria's gaze turned cold as she looked directly at him, her expression unreadable. "No, you didn't," she said calmly. "But that's exactly the problem, isn't it? You didn't care to know. You saw me, but you didn't see me. You never asked who I was or why I was here. All you saw was a uniform, and that's why you'll be the first to go." Andrew's face paled. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice cracking. Maria looked him straight in the eye, her tone unflinching. "You're fired, Andrew. Effective immediately." The room erupted into murmurs as Andrew sat back, his hands trembling. This was the same man who had spent years climbing the corporate ladder, cutting down anyone who stood in his way. Now, in a matter of minutes, everything he had worked for was gone. "This is a wake-up call for all of you," Maria continued, addressing the entire board. "I may have started at the bottom, but I built my way to the top. I bought this company piece by piece, and now I own the majority of it. Apex Enterprises is going to change, and if you can't adapt, you're welcome to leave." Her words hung in the air, a final warning to the remaining executives. Those who had spent years building walls of superiority around themselves now realized those walls had crumbled. Elena, standing near the back, felt a wave of admiration for Maria. She had come into the company with high hopes but had quickly seen the toxic culture that pervaded its ranks. Now, she saw the beginning of a new chapter and knew she wanted to be part of it. Maria turned toward Jonathan Blake, who gave her a knowing nod. "Thank you, Jonathan, for believing in me when no one else did," she said, her voice softer now. Jonathan smiled, his respect for Maria clear. "It's not hard to believe in someone as strong and determined as you," he replied. "This company needed a leader like you, Maria, someone who knows what it means to work for something, to earn it." Maria looked around the room one last time, meeting the eyes of each executive. "This is your opportunity," she said firmly. "You can stay and be part of something better, or you can leave. But either way, things are going to be different from now on." With that, she turned and walked out of the boardroom, leaving behind a trail of stunned faces. The power dynamics had shifted in an instant, and everyone knew it. Elena followed her out, her heart pounding. She caught up to Maria in the hallway. "Ms. Lopez," she began, her voice full of respect. "I just wanted to say thank you for everything." Maria paused, turning to look at the young woman. She smiled, a genuine warmth in her eyes. "You don't have to thank me, Elena. Just remember one thing. Never let anyone tell you your worth. You decide that." Elena nodded, her admiration for Maria deepening. She knew she had just witnessed something remarkable, a moment that would change not only the company but her own life as well. As Maria walked out of the office, the city of Chicago sprawled out before her. The skyline, with its towering buildings and bustling streets, felt different today. It wasn't just a city of glass and steel anymore. It was a city where anyone, no matter where they came from, could rise to the top if they had the strength to persevere. And as for Apex Enterprises, they'd never forget the day they laughed at Maria Lopez, the cleaning lady who, it turned out, owned it all. Leave a comment if you enjoyed this story. It doesn't cost you anything, and it will make us very happy. Thank you, and we look forward to your likes and thoughts.